Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to have another discussion about everybody's favorite game mode, Whimpering Wastes. And the topic of today is doing a little bit of investigation, doing a little bit of clue finding as well to determine what exactly is the reason for why 2.7's WhiWa reset feels so much better than the prior ones. Because one thing is for certain about the clears that I've gotten in this game mode. They felt a lot more achievable. The enemies feel like they have less HP. My characters feel like they're doing more damage, and I've personally been able to clear with every single 1.0 unit with some pretty average levels of investment and not really that sweaty gameplay. So with that in mind, let's talk about it. Before we jump in, let's talk about sleep for a second. I wasn't getting any real rest. My old bed frame squeaked, wobbled, and basically drove me nuts at night. So yeah, I knew it was time for an upgrade. That's where today's sponsor, FlexiSpot, comes in. They sent me their Japanese-inspired joinery bed frame, and honestly, it's been a total game changer. No screws, no crazy tools, just smart woodworking that uses tension and compression to lock everything in place. The result? Way stronger, way quieter, and no more squeaks waking me up at night. And this isn't just any old wood, it's premium rubber wood. Super dense, durable, moisture-resistant, and eco-friendly because it's harvested from trees after they finish producing latex. Plus, check this out, the recessed legs. They sit inward so the frame hugs the wall, saves space, and keeps you from stubbing your toes. And under the frame, a full 10.2 inches of underbed clearance. Perfect for storing boxes, bins, or anything else you want out of sight but within reach. FlexiSpot also gives you tons of options to build your dream setup. Headboard, nightstands, adjustable backrest, or a removable, washable pillboard to keep things fresh. And it supports up to 1,200 pounds, stays rock solid, and looks amazing in a Japanese, Scandinavian, or modern style bedroom. It literally took me just 30 minutes to put it together, and I did it solo. No frustration, no mountains of screws, just click, slide, and done. If you're ready to upgrade your sleep, hit the link below and use my code at checkout for a big discount. Comfort, quality, and style, all in one package. Trust me, once you switch to this FlexiSpot bed frame, you're never going back. So what I wanted to do was actually go through my repository of Whimpering Wastes videos, starting from 2.5's reset, where hit the fan, and then into the 2.7 reset, where stuff got a lot better. So without further ado, let's start breaking down a little bit of context, a little bit of history over here, because one thing we want to ensure, right, is that history doesn't repeat itself. All right, first things first. Here's the first video ever. And some people are going to say same shirt. They're different shirts, okay? I just want to get that straight right off the bat. This version of Whimpering Wastes had a lot of issues for a couple of reasons. The first one being, they only had shield tokens available, right? They only had ones for Augusta, they had ones for the Fusion team, and of course, they had one for the Lova team. The other issue was the fact that when you actually went into this reset, what you would find is that your scores would be terrible because the mobs had a ton of HP. To the point where, and let me just look up some of the glue myself, I'm pretty sure I have a thumbnail that literally states that there's been about 114% HP inflation. Where is it? Oh my gosh. I have WhiWa in that many thumbnails? Sometimes I got too many videos. Oh my god. Oh my god, 7 out of 10? Where are we at? Where are we at here? Oh, here we go. Kuro Games got greedy. WhiWa's pay to win. And is Kuro the new Hoyo? 114% HP inflation. So yeah, we made a lot of videos about this reset because it was literally the worst balanced reset in the history of the game. So we found some glue that yes, the HP of the mobs literally went up on average around 114%. And that's why so many teams, like a premium Gion team over here with Gion Shorekeeper Mortefi, were getting scores of around 2,000 when they used to be getting around 3,000 plus. And for Lova's team, with Cantarella and Rosia, was the only one that felt halfway decent. This reset was terrible. This one was awful. It needed fixed immediately. And so Kuro did a little bit of that with their 2.6 WhiWa update. But the problem was, well, it didn't really go all the way. Because one thing that they had in the 2.6 update was literally the worst token in the history of the game. They only had 2 hyper-specific tokens over here, right? They had the Forlova one alongside the Augusta and Yuno one. That, you know, the Augusta and Yuno one is still currently in the game, but the rest of them have been replaced, right? But then they also had this Burning Waves token, which was essentially reinforcing the new mechanic over here where at a baseline your damage is increased by 30%, and then once you enter Burning Waves, you deal 60% extra damage. This is the thing, that buff has remained exactly the same. So you're noticing over here a lot of similarities between this reset that feels really good and the past reset where it was almost there, but not really fully complete. And this is probably the biggest cause of it. This Burning Waves token over here effectively did not do anything when you started it. Burning Waves is a buff that triggers when you deal damage or defeat enemies. It typically triggers around halfway through your runs. And this token literally had no impact at all on your clears until you were in the Burning Waves state. And once you were in there, you dealt a 50% extra damage on top of the 60% that you were already doing. In reality, this buff is literally worse than the Plunderer's token. It is, without a doubt, the worst gold token that's ever been released in the history of the game. And so, when people lost access to this in the most recent reset and just started using Plunderers, or maybe this red token instead, their clears on average just got better. Because we've done some of the research, ladies and gentlemen. I made a lot of claims in my most recent WhiWa video. I made claims like this. HP has gone down. There's been HP deflation. Burning Waves. This buff over here that increases your damage as you deal damage. It's all activating faster. I said a lot of stuff that seemed like it was the case. But I'm just going to be honest. I was actually spreading some misinformation here, ladies and gentlemen. Because my mods have gone ahead. They've done the research. They've done the glue investigating. And it actually turns out the HPs remained pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, I had a mod go in and I didn't tell them to do it, but they just did it themselves. They took a look at the HP of all the different mobs that are available in the reset. The first half compared to the other half, right? And one reset over the other. And what you'll notice is the HP numbers have remained exactly the same. But everyone's scoring like 500, 600 points, maybe even more compared to the last reset. And this is also the other thing. My same mod that was recording all this HP data also let me know that when it came to Burning Waves, right, and this buff triggering, it's triggering at the same time. It's triggering at the same time in this most recent reset as it did in this one. So, essentially, in the most recent version of Whimpering Wastes, where it feels pretty balanced and pretty good, and I've been able to pretty easily clear with a bunch of 1.0 units, the enemy HP is the same. The Burning Waves mechanic hasn't been updated, really, at all. And the only thing that's different is that this token over here is removed, so everyone's pretty much using Plunderers now, instead of that awful gold token, and the enemies. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what I think is the biggest impact of the Whimpering Wastes reset. It's the mobs that they put in. Because one thing is abundantly clear about these enemies over here. Rose Shrooms don't move. And Cuddle Wuddles don't really move either. That's the first half. Then you take a look at the second half. These guys don't really move. Rocksteady Guardians, they open up the fight with a parryable attack and then immediately can get broken and stop moving ASAP. And the Chasm Guardian, it's the same thing. In this reset, none of these elites and these one costs, they don't really move. Then you take a look at the 2.6 reset where some people had some issues, right? Let's just take a look at some of this Camellia. Is the Camellia team a good one to show over here? Let me just, yeah, oh, yeah, this will be a great one to show. Let's see what happens in this reset, where you got some Abyssal Gladiuses, right? And of course, everyone's favorite enemy. They're gonna spawn right after this, I think. Ah, the good old Chop Chop. Let's check out what these guys do. Yeah, do you see any Chop Chops on my screen currently? I only see 3 1 costs on my screen. Let's just take it full. I only see 3 1 costs laying on the ground, yet half a second ago, we just had 2 Chop Chops. We just had 2 Chop Chops on the screen and 4 mobs. Where they at, though? Where they at? These guys have, like, the same knockback as, like, 1 cost enemies. And so you hit them once with a random attack, and they'll literally go flying off the screen. That's actually one of the Chop Chops over here behind my chat. And the other Chop Chop is behind the Burning Wave symbol. How did they get so far away? It doesn't even look like I did anything. How are they already off the screen? How? Look at that. That's crazy. And so I do think a good part of why people had some dog shit clears in the last reset is because they would just honestly have no actual errors in their gameplay. They wouldn't misplay, but they would just end up in a grouping situation like this, where you don't even have any idea how it happened, what you did wrong, but then suddenly they were just grouped 1 second ago at the end of my Camellia's rotation, and in the setup for the next one, I'm hitting one enemy at a time. Crazy, right? And this would be present, I do believe, on both sides. You would have Chop Chops on both sides. And this had one wave where it was just 3 of them. And then these 3 would like all spawn in and then immediately all go off in a different direction. That's a far cry, right? From this enemy design. Where, let's just take a look at this. Feel like they're that. Let's just take a look at this. What's happening over here? Huh? These guys don't move. You're basically guaranteed to hit them with everything. You don't gotta chase them around at all. And even with high ping and me wasting skills, because these enemies are so much more accessible, I'm able to use a character with limited amounts of AoE like Carlotta and completely demolish this content to the point where you want to see the score that I'm getting with the Carlotta Jeja team. It's like 2.5k. You want to know what score I was getting with other Carlotta teams? I'll show you. I had a thumbnail that was literally crazy. Oh, this is ridiculous. What has Kuro done? That was an S2R1 Carlotta in the same team with Jeja and Shorekeeper, and it was pulling only 2k. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, after looking through all of this data, after examining all of this glue, after playing through myself and clearing with all 1.0 units, ladies and gentlemen, it's really just the enemies. Because this reset over here still had problems. I told the devs that they should reduce HP. I told the devs that they should go ahead, right, and increase the uptime of the Burning Waves buff. But they didn't do any of those things. All they did was switch out the mobs, and scores on average are about 500 points higher. And one thing is for certain, right? A character like Frolova doesn't really gain any advantages at all from this like wave shroom, rose shroom based wave. But she's really good in content where you need all that grouping and you want all that grouping. And I think a healthy part of this and Frolova's performance over other teams in the game was the fact that she would just destroy Chop Chop waves. They wouldn't even have a chance to move. And so all of the drawbacks, all of the concerns that other teams had to deal with that would reduce their scores, she wouldn't have to deal with any of them. But when you're against stationary enemies that don't move as much, Frolova's grouping isn't nearly as helpful. And the end result is that, well, her clear times or clear scores over other teams aren't really... The difference has literally shortened significantly. And the other part about this reset that's just absolutely insane in 2.7, right? With these enemies not moving compared to Chop Chops over here, let's just find some good footage over here. These enemies aren't Havoc resistant, right? But they oftentimes... Camellia teams would oftentimes score worse on the non-Havoc resistant floors because you'd end up in situations like this, where you're playing your Camellia teams and you'll intro in and the enemies are this far apart. Camellia's not hitting any of them. And in this reset, right now, where you got the Havoc resistant Rostrum, you got the Havoc resistant Faye Ignis, the Havoc resistant Hocus Pocus, Chasm Guardian, and Faye Ignis again, Camellia is scoring higher in this reset than she was doing in prior resets. She's scoring higher into resistance because even if those enemies are havoc resistant, they're not fucking moving so much. They're not getting this actively ungrouped across the rotation. And that alone, I think, speaks volumes about what's actually going on in the game mode. Because oh my, has this been an eye-opening experience. So yeah, I would just dare say right now, my biggest hopes for the game mode are, let's take what we did in 2.7 and let's just try to have more of this. I think the stationary enemies are good. Maybe you debuff the Chop Chops to take out certain spin moves from their moveset. If you're going to take out moves from bosses in the TOA to make them less annoying, for example, the Ikes never flies up into the air, right, and then does the dive move. The Gorilla never jumps on the bongo drums, right, and like just stays there for 10 seconds in the fight. Just modify some of these enemy movesets to take out the crazy dashes in their kit. The Abyssal Mercator, right, like these bastards, they'll just like dash away. The Chop Chops dash away and just prevent a situation. This is probably the most egregious example of them all. This is not okay. To be perfectly grouped, it's not okay to be like perfectly grouped in one second. Like perfectly grouped right here. And then in the span of 1 second, I have now seen the worst grouping in the history of the game. That's crazy. And thankfully, with whatever they did in this reset, maybe they added more weight to the one-cost mobs. Maybe they added more weight to all the mobs. Something like that. It's been so much more manageable when you're not using a Frolova team actually getting the clears here. To the point where you don't need new gold tokens. You can literally just throw on Plunderers, get a 1.0 team, and then just go crush the game mode. It doesn't matter that there's not a generalized gold token. It's actually entirely possible. And I think that, there's a better balance that Kuro Games can take. I still think there should be 2 shield tokens and 1 general one. They just gotta make sure that whatever general token they come up with isn't as fucking trash as this thing. Because this was effectively the same as not playing with a token at all with how awful it was. So yeah, that's going to be our sort of like case study, our sort of like post-mortem review of this Whimpering Wastes reset. I think that they finally struck a good balance. I'll still echo the thoughts, but I'll take back, right, the takes that there was HP deflation. I'll take back the takes that Burning Waves activates faster. All they did was modify the mobs, but they didn't reduce their HP. But the game mode literally feels so much better than the past reset. And hopefully this video, this coverage, has shown you all the exact reasons as well. Because what always comes up in every single patch? Feedback. The feedback survey. And so we can tell Kuro, either take these chop bastards out of the game mode, or modify their movesets so I don't end up in situations like this right here. Where I'm chasing one of them down for the entire run. They move way too fucking much. So yeah. That'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I think Kuro Games definitely has a lot more thinking that they can do when it comes to Whimpering Wastes. I think this latest reset is a good step forward once again. And as long as they keep these sort of like enemy profiles that aren't ridiculous, that can move a little bit, but that aren't going ahead and ungrouping like crazy, I think future resets of this mode should be feeling a lot better. So yeah, if you guys ever see Chop Chops again, you know what to do. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.